Welcome to the Home Service Contractor Blueprint by A2O Digital. Every episode will cover topics that impact all home service companies like marketing, sales tactics, operations, and more. Now, on to today's episode.
Hi, I'm Tim Coleman, and I'm your host today. I'm also the managing partner of A2O Digital, a full-service digital marketing agency working exclusively with home service businesses. My co-host today is Justin Benchko, who's the director at our agency. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you, Tim. Glad to be here. I think we got a topic that has, at least if you're in the SEO world, has been being talked about a lot. So excited to kind of talk about it and unpack some of the takeaways we have from this. Yeah,
for sure. So we're talking about the Google leak, and this happened, I think, in March. It was in March when it happened, and it was something like 14,000 attributes of Google search, local, YouTube, basically all Google properties, and it was really the ranking factors of these properties and how they relate to these properties.
Yes, it was an internal document, right? And it kind of, you got to look under the hood of what Google's looking at when they're, their algorithm of how they're deciding to rank things. It kind of give you an under the hood look. And it didn't necessarily like tell you the weight of different things, so It doesn't give you everything, but it was very interesting.
It was a comprehensive look at all of the things they consider, but not how much they consider each thing. Is the way that I'm sort of thinking about it. The other thing that I'm very curious about, because this is how my mind works, was this an accident? My first thing is a conspiracy right away. I want to know if this, and I know I'll never get that answer, and I will wonder about it for the rest of my life.
It's an interesting thought. What would be Google's motive for it not to be an accident? I guess, like, why would they?
It was one engineer who did it, as far as I know.
Yeah.
And why would you? I mean, it's a GitHub repository. I don't work in GitHub regularly, but like. I think as an engineer, I don't know enough of this, but I would speculate. But like, why are you making the most private document in that company public?
I mean, it could be one disgruntled employee that
felt
a certain way.
That's interesting, right?
But you're saying maybe Google from the top said, let's leak this document, and it's because
no, Google,
okay.
No way, disgruntled employee, I didn't get my lunch today, they took away my free lunch or whatever, and like, but that's pure speculation. What we do know is that Google has confirmed that it was a leak. Google did confirm that it's real, so we got confirmation from Google.
Yep.
We did not. Everything else I just said was pure speculation, and what I want to know, curious minds want to know.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the interesting takeaways from it, from our perspective, and this is coming from we work in home services, right? As a home service business, what were the most interesting things to us and takeaways? And it could be different, right? If you're in different industries, there may be specific things that more apply to industries. So we're looking at it from this perspective of home services. First thing, that I'll say is they talked about clickstream data and Chrome. So obviously Google has the Chrome browser, right? And it sounds like one of their motives for creating this is that they can measure what people are doing within that browser, right? So obviously Google can measure if someone's doing a Google search, they can measure that, but once they leave the Google search result and go to a page, they're not able to then measure anything that's going on an individual website, right?
That's right. Analytics there was no mention of them using Google Analytics,
which is interesting.
Yeah. But Chrome definitely.
Yes. Yeah. So they're using Chrome to maybe get a better look, right, at what someone's doing once they go to that individual website, right?
Maybe. Yeah. I think they're definitely using that in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was just interesting that like that was, and it makes sense, right? Like the more information they have there, I don't know if that gets into
how many
privacy.
of us read the privacy terms? None of us read it. We just the browser's faster. I'm going to use it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we never considered it, but now we know they're using it. And you know, when you see some of the things in that, and you hear SEOs talking about it or breaking down this document, and you think about what happened in the antitrust trial, you could sort of even say, okay, they talked about nav boost in that trial, and now we say just really how often it's mentioned in this document and how big a ranking factor nav boost really is.
Yeah, Tim, talk a little bit, just a reminder for everyone what nav boost kind of is, because we talked about this on a earlier episode. It's come up a couple times, and this is like a relatively new term. Talk about just quick what that is, and then we can get into like some of the how they're measuring clicks, and we can talk about some details.
Yeah, nav boost is literally, I think, the clicks that are associated with, I think, what Google calls like a normalized query or something like that. Is kind of the way what I got out of it, right? So how many times is this document being clicked on for that query, and then they can slice it a bunch of different ways, particularly for us that's so important is by geo, right? You see sometimes you're ranking in one town and not the other town as a local business, and you think, how come? And it could be your brand is more powerful. There's more folks in one town have used you than the other town or something like that. So they can slice it. They can slice it by geo, and like you can just we're getting the sense that the algorithm for organic is much closer to the algorithm for ads, which we've always known relied on CTR. CTR was a huge part of rank score for ads. We always knew that. Google revealed that. We knew that. I mean, that's how it works.
So CTR, just to explain that, right? In Google Ads, click-through rate is something that is super important that we're measuring, and that's just saying, if your ad showed up 100 times, what percentage is that getting clicked on? So if your CTR is 5 out of those 100 searches, someone clicked on it. Google's measuring that Google's looking at that to see that. Essentially, the searcher is voting and saying like, hey, this ad is answering what I was looking for. So they use that in their algorithm. And kind of with nav boost and all this, in the document, they're measuring all different types of clicks. Again, like you said, it's working very similarly in that like they're measuring what are people clicking on. Right, like they're using that data to determine and use that as votes, essentially, of what to rank. So
now they're also taking it a step further from anything that I imagine ever taking place in Google Ads, and that is trying to assess further the quality of the click. Right?
Yes. So I'll just start naming some of these.
Oh, Josh, you're going to do the SEO's new vocabulary words. Here we go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So there's bad click, there's good click. There's last longest click. There was one in here called unicorn click.
The unicorn click, which was a especially good click, right? Yeah. The unicorn click.
So it didn't necessarily in the document explain exactly what all those. We can infer what those mean, right? Essentially, though, they're trying to measure each of these clicks. They're not all clicks are measured equal, right? Was that a good click? How would they determine a good versus a bad click? Let's just like speculate and talk about that. If you were Google, how would we measure that?
I would try to assess if a person was there for 1 second. Did they leave because they got their answer answered and it was such a good result, or did they leave because the site was horrible and then I think the way Google could do that is like, okay, let's say I typed in weather and I went to a site real quick, 2 seconds, I saw the temperature, that's all I wanted, I was done, and I didn't refine my query, I didn't click anything else. Right?
You didn't go anywhere else, right? So if you went, that's a good point, right? If you click, let's say you click a link, you go to a site. You could get what you want and be done and not do anything else. And let's just say you hit back and then you stopped. And you were on the page for 5 seconds. That actually could be a good click, right? If you did that you got to the page, you hit back, and then you started clicking on more sites and started looking at that and stayed on another site for a while, that would be an indicator that first click wasn't a good click, even though it was the same. Right. You did the same thing. So yeah, they must be using the context of everything that you did in that session on Google, right? Did you search something else different?
Did you refine the query? Did you pogo stack? Yeah. Like all those things. You've got to imagine. And then we learned for the first time there's a weighting system for these between 0 and 1, right? So they don't do anything in absolutes. They're not saying, oh, we're sure of this. We say, oh, the probability is a little bit higher that this was a good click. The probability is a little bit lower that this was a good click. This might even be a bad click, right?
Yeah. Last longest click was another one on here. That's probably the indicator, right? The longest click, they went somewhere, stayed there for a long time, and that was the last thing they did. That's probably, if you get a lot, I'm imagining that's a good thing for you if you get a lot of last longest clicks on your site. There's no way to know all of this for sure, but
right.
I would imagine that. Yeah, all super interesting. There's also squashed versus unsquashed clicks.
Yeah, no, I was trying to understand those, and to me, squash was like Google was squashing them. Like Google was like wanted to count them less because they couldn't determine like the quality or something like that.
So my understanding with those, from what I've read, and I don't think I have a perfect understanding, this is the way that they're making sure that their algorithms cannot be manipulated, right? Like they have always denied that they use, clicks and all this information.
That's an important thing, yeah.
And I get why they probably have done that. Like if, there's spammers are always going to figure out the next thing, right? If these are important, they're going to figure out a scheme to go and, okay, I'm going to get a VPN and come from all over the country and put clicks on our site and do all these things. So I think the squash and unsquash is one of the ways that Google is preventing something like that from manipulating their rankings, right? I think it talked a little bit about how not one signal can't like totally dominate the algorithm and where they rank things. So that's a way that they do that. I don't know exactly.
I think that's right, though. I think that's right. Squash and unsquash is like how Google regards it. Whether they're literally going to use the click and squash it, or they think that this is a click that should count and it's unsquashed. Now, I'm not positive of that. We're all learning some new vocabulary words in this and how Google refers to some of those things. But we definitely got some new vocabulary words, particularly around click. And I think the big thing for small business owners to take away from Nav Boost is that brand matters. Like when you think about what's the takeaway, we just talked about all this vocabulary. There's no action item for squash and unsquash and all that vocabulary we just learned. But there is an action item that says, hey, brand matters. And Matt Cutts, who was a former Google engineer, he's in charge of spam, and he was the PR guy for years who talked to SEOs. As early as 2005, I saw him making videos about Google trying to figure out that puzzle between authority and popularity, right? Because popularity is probably going to tell you a lot more about a plumber than links. There's just not a lot of reason for small businesses to link to one another, backlinks. It's not a great measure of how good a plumber you are. But how many folks go to the search box, type in your brand, then click on your website? Probably is a really good measure of how good of a plumber you are, particularly when you could start slicing up by geo, right? Mm-hmm. And we know they're doing that. That's now fully confirmed. So
how far do you think they go with the geo? I think they can go down to like even, certain communities, right? Like when you look at search results.
It mentioned country, it mentioned state, I think, but to your point, it went beyond just the town. Like it was like, I forgot how, it wasn't quite neighborhood, but it was a synonym for that. I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was like it could like really slice geo.
But they could measure in even like a local town, right? The difference and rank things differently versus, a county or a metro area, right? Like they're looking at it at that level and giving different results at that level, which is important for a local home service business, right? Like you may, if you're smaller, you may only service, depending on what vertical you're in, right? Like a small town or a small few towns, right? So you can still kind of do this and have that popularity in a small area and still kind of be effective at this. It's not like, oh, I'm not the big guy. There's no way for me to, compete. You can do this in a smaller level and have an effect. So
and from our perspective, we absolutely see that with our customers. We know that the customers who spend the most in the most effective media, right? If spending advertising in media that's not effective. So in our industry, spending in Google Ads will get you a lot of clicks. It will get you a lot of new customers. And when somebody becomes your customer, they stop typing in category searches and start typing in brand searches. So they spend a lot on Google.
Hopefully.
Yeah, if you do a good job.
Yeah.
That's
if you do a good job, right? Like if they, if you went and did something for them a few years ago, right? Do you remember the plumber that came to your house 3 years ago? Maybe.
Not 3 years ago.
And I think that's part of too.
Yesterday. He was there last week, so I might be able to come up with his name, but not 3 years ago.
But just to think about this is I don't want to like derail, but staying in communication and making sure that they remember you. That can play a part in that too. So
post-sale, yeah. So those types of things, and I know that people get mad when I say advertising in Google Ads. I do not think advertising in Google Ads will help you rank in Google. I think if the industry that you are in, Google Ads is an effective form of advertising, then an effective form of advertising, which in this case happens to be Google Ads, would help you rank in Google. But our guys who do TV, our guys who do radio, our guys who are just doing wherever they can get, feel like they can accomplish a level of branding that they desire or get a ROAS, they're going to spend that money. They tend to rank much, much better than our customers who says, you guys are it. You're all I'm doing, and we need you. That's great, but it's not going to be as effective.
Yeah, we just had Ryan Shute from the Wizard of Ads on the podcast and talked all about like branding and all those types of things. And this is another area where, like we said, branding helps you. You do those types of things. There's more people searching for your brand, or if they do that category search, then there's that aided recall, right? Where they say, oh yeah, Precision or whatever your brand is, XYZ, plumbing. I remember them from that commercial, and they click on you, right? Like those are Google's measuring those things, and that helps you with SEO too. So simple. The more people in any given community who search for you and click on you. Both ways.
And it's all legitimate. Let's just assume it's legitimate. It's not being manipulated. I don't want to talk about how to manipulate it. I don't know how to manipulate it. But if those things happen naturally, you're going to rank better.
Yes, if they're searching
relative to your competition.
If they're searching for your brand, or also if they're doing a category search and then they click on you because then they recall your brand. So in both ways, that's Google's definitely measuring that. It's super important. What other any other things from the document? I kind of had on my notes about page rank. They talked about domain level page rank. So that's basically like the main page on your site, the home page, your domain as a whole. That how they decide to rank that, and the power of that will affect the rankings of every other page on your site, which is interesting.
So huge surprise there, because the original page rank formula was just what it said. It was not called homepage rank. It was called page rank, right? So I can remember prominent SEOs literally saying, because newbies would come in and they would say, what's the page rank of my website? And that technically wasn't correct. It was each page on your website. And I had a blog. I was writing a blog in the I don't even know what you call the aughts, right? It was 2006, 2007. And that was when the pixie dust, that's what people call the PR bar, in the browser was still there. So I go to every page on my blog and see the page rank of it. So in my brain, I associated page rank with page.
Yep.
Now it turns out what?
Turns out that they're actually looking at the top level domain when they're ranking all the other pages, right?
It's an attribute of every page on your website. Now the whole page rank, complete surprise to anybody who's kind of studied this over the years.
Yep.
So that was really interesting.
They also talked about different penalties that you can potentially have. One that was interesting to me is the exact match domain you can get a penalty for that. So that's basically if your domain URL is an exact match to whatever that search is. So like an example, if you're a plumber in Cincinnati, right? If your URL is cincinnatiplumber.com, right? Actually, back in the day, that used to be a strategy to be able to rank really well. Now, Google's actually saying that it can be something that is a penalty. And we've seen Google, they're so much better at, deciphering that and that not being like a huge factor. So
I definitely would not worry about cincinnatiplumber.com. But if
you already, I think there's two distinguishing factors. If you already have that domain now, I wouldn't worry about changing it, right? Because there's so many factors with domain and trying to switch it or whatever. But if I was starting from scratch a business, I wouldn't pick that domain. I would pick something associated with the brand.
I would pick my brand. I agree with that too. But I just don't want to panic Cincinnati plumbers and the like out there. We have many that are town, geo, and they're
fine.
And category town domains that are very old and they rank just fine. This I think about, like, imagine I came up with a domain that I just wanted to rank full. I did like modern-black-garage-doors.com. Like now I'm going for one particular really narrow search term. It's not even that's, I think, the type of domain that like kind of ranked in the past and produced kind of like a result that wouldn't have been good for the searcher. Yeah. And Google wants to get rid of those, and rightfully so in my mind. Cincinnati Plumber, I would worry a lot less than we don't even remember that happening anymore because Google got rid of them. I don't know. It's like I feel like it was like 10 years ago now or something like that that they got rid of those types of things. So Cincinnati Plumber is an example, but I wouldn't. If I'm Cincinnati Plumber, I'm not. Yeah. I'm not worried about it. Especially,
and you got to look at everything. You got to look at everything into totality too. There's multiple reasons to make a decision on a domain and all that. So, okay. Anything else like specific call outs? I think we can let's like kind of like try and main takeaways from all this. Is there anything else before we do that you wanted to touch on?
I think there were two very interesting things. I watched a podcast that had Rand and Mike King in it, and I think there were two super, super interesting things. First on links. So Rand and Mike King talked about something that was very surprising to me in that.
So Rand is Rand Fishkin, right? Fishkin. Who's been in the SEO world for a long time.
He's no longer in the SEO world, but he's the founder of SEO Moz back in the day, and he was very prominent in SEO from 2000 to 2015 or something like that when he left Moz. Something like that. Don't quote me on the years. But and Rand Fishkin would have been a person like that I followed very closely when I came into the industry to learn how to do. Like it was Rand Fishkin and Aaron Wall and Danny Sullivan, and these are the guys that I followed to learn way back in the day. And they talked about when we thought about links. When we think about backlinking, we think about no follow, we think about the page rank of the site from which we're getting the link. And I've heard John Mueller, another PR guy from Google, talk about what I'm about to say, but we got, I think, confirmation here in that the amount of organic traffic that the page that link is on and how often that link gets clicked is going to matter, and that data is coming from Chrome. So Google can really assess the quality of the link now using Chrome. That's super interesting. And here's a real kicker. If it is a no-follow link, but it's on a page that gets a lot of organic traffic, Google will count it. Super, super interesting. And the example they gave is, let's say you got a no-follow link. The editorial policy of like Forbes, for instance, is that they have to no-follow the links. So, and that's just an example. I don't know if Forbes has that editorial policy or not. And it ranks number one for a popular query. People flood to that page. They start clicking that link. Google's counting that link.
Yeah.
Conversely, you get a
follow link and it doesn't do anything.
It's not with a ton of authority. Nobody ever goes to or sees it. It's like if a tree falls in a forest.
Yeah.
So that, and now they know that from Chrome. That's a huge revelation from all of us. I think that's actionable for anybody who does link building, hires link, backlink, whatever. So that one's huge.
Yeah, if you're not like in the SEO world and following this, that doesn't really mean anything to you. But if you are, you may have at one point said, it's a no follow link. That doesn't. I'm not going to worry about that, or I'm not going to spend the time to go do that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, this is saying that's not the case. You still go that. Google's still looking at that, considering it. They can see this in the Chrome browser, and it's probably worth getting anyway.
Yeah.
So.
The other thing is, I think that affects small business owners, and this will happen to a lot of small business owners from time to time. If you want to add a service to your site, they talked about topicality.
So let's go with an example for this. Let's say you're in the HVAC industry.
That's
right?
actually and you added plumbing.
And you want to get into plumbing, right?
That's
You're
exactly
doing the HVAC. Your
they
website.
Joy's podcast. It was Joy's anybody who's interested in this, Google link Joy Hawkins podcast with Rand and Mike King. It's super interesting.
Cool. Yeah, we can link to that. Right.
Sure,
I think there's some way we'll link to that in the notes.
It was super interesting.
But so say you're an HVAC company, you've been doing that for forever, and you're saying I want to move into plumbing, and your website is all about HVAC. And now you want to rank for plumbing, right? That's kind of the scenario you're talking about.
Yeah,
here.
What they talked about is they have this complicated database. It's called the vector database. And to me, to explain, a database is just rows and columns, so it's an Excel spreadsheet. Now, if you gave it depth, you'd have a vector database, like super complicated, right? That's what Google's using to measure topicality. So if you're an HVAC guy, I'm going to use a little more extreme example, because I think plumbers with HVAC, it's much more common. But we had a customer who was basically the largest pest control company in New Jersey, Viking Pest Control. And for whatever reason, I don't even know why this is, in addition to doing pest control, they sold gutter guards. Those things that would keep the leaves from getting in your gutter. Mm-hmm. And
so it's totally different, like random service, not related to pest control at all.
This was, I don't care what measure you use for Viking, popularity, authority, page rank, whatever. They ranked number one in many, many towns in New Jersey. Like, they were a powerful website. They were around for a long time. They were the biggest. But you wanted to search for gutter guards. Viking was not. You go through 100 pages and you're not going to find Viking for that, because topically.
So Google's saying this site is all about pest control. I'm not ranking them for gutters. This has nothing to do with it. Think
what that would do to even Google's credibility, right? I searched for a gutter guard. I got a pest control site. Oh my gosh! So what they talked about, Mike and Rand on Joy's podcast, was you can't just do one page. If they really wanted to start ranking for gutter guards, they would have had to really expand their content in that field to expand that topic.
To show that they kind of have an authority in that.
And then you start talking about, is that a good idea?
Yeah, so my question was that I was going to ask, does that take away? Yeah, exactly.
Are you probably diluting? Right?
Yeah.
So if you're writing blogs and blog posts, keep them related to your content. Don't start creating complications. Google is not great with inconsistencies. That's what we've seen. I read somewhere else it came out of this link. If you got from a site a follow link and a no follow link, Google does not know how to deal with it, so it just follows it. Right? Google doesn't do well with inconsistency. I would actually encourage you not to have the gutter guard page, or maybe no index the gutter. I would say
you got to do kind of a cost benefit
as you're coming up.
Yeah, I think you got to do a cost benefit analysis of is this important to try and rank this other service, whatever it is. What am I potentially losing by doing this? What are the potential risks from doing it, and figure out.
And if you're an SEO whose customer comes to you and says, "Listen, I'm a pest guy. I want to do gutter guards. I need you to rank this page for me." Let them know right away that that's probably not going to happen. You can talk about topicality. You have the proof, and you say. It's not just no SEO is going to be able to do that for you. Yeah. Google's ranking topics, and it's not really going to work. I think that as a small business owner, you should think, okay, so the traditional factors, they all still matter, right? Title tags, having good relevant content, and
Links.
backlinks. Yeah. So the first thing, I think you want to create a site that will resonate with your potential customers, and they will want to choose you. So I think you want to learn and know what customers are looking for. You and I just had this sort of conversation before. I almost feel like putting a survey on my site to find out,
Yeah.
like, what customers are looking for. I can survey my existing customers, and I probably have on my site what they were looking for. But what about those people who clicked on my site and didn't convert? Maybe I need to survey them. How do I do that?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought with this, right? Google is measuring this. They're saying every single person that visits your site is a vote, and they're using that to determine, how to show these search results, right? Put a survey on your site. People come and aren't getting what they're looking for. See if you can get their input on what you didn't provide and provide that, right? Like that's the whole thing. Like, you need to make sure that when someone comes to your site, you're answering the questions that they're looking for and they're getting what they need, right? Like, that's ultimately what all of Google's trying to measure. So that's a really good idea, actually, right? Having that survey there and find out directly from the people where you're falling short and figure out how to get that information to them.
We want to solve our customers' problems on our website so that they call us, they do business with us, and Google sees that.
Yep.
I think that's a takeaway that we can learn. I think that at a high level you can think about it three ways. There's authority, there's popularity, and there's quality. So I think if you're newer, if you go to page 1 for your site, if you type in lawn sprinklers, Timbuktu, and you're not coming up on the first page, go get backlinks.
Google, so if you can't get to the point where you're actually getting clicks, Google has nothing to measure. Right, so you have to do all the traditional stuff to kind of get you in the ring to actually kind of be able to have Google look at this and measure what people are doing. So that's like that's where you said from the authority standpoint. It's like you still have to do all the traditional stuff. It still matters. That kind of gets you in the ring to then talk about the other things.
Yeah, and we're going through this. We created an online scheduler. It's called Street to Fleet. We created a website, a small website. We haven't done anything traditionally SEO. It is barely in the index. You type in the brand, and Google thinks you spelled it wrong because I haven't done any of the traditional stuff yet that I need to do so I need to start. Doesn't matter how high quality the site is right now. I could have published the cure for cancer, and it would not matter, right? Like I have got to do some of the traditional things in order to get that to where it can be Google can start assessing it, meaning getting clicks.
Yeah.
So we got to get backlinks. We're not to the first page. We have to start. SEO starts with backlinks. Google might not even index it if you don't have any backlinks.
Yeah.
That's where you start.
So that's the kind of authority part, the first part. Next, you said popularity.
Yeah. This is people typing your name in the search box to me and then clicking on you when they type that in. Or, as you kind of said, you do a category search, you're predisposed to that brand, and you select them.
Yeah.
To me, those are the two components of popularity. Do you have a brand that people recognize, or are you just hoping to be number one and they just click on you because they reflexively click on the number one result? That's not going to work anymore. You can't do that anymore. So you have authority and popularity, and then quality, which we kind of just talked about. Are you, for that particular query, when they click on your site, does it answer the question? Do they choose you and then are done searching? Or do they leave your site, go into the next site, spend 10 minutes there, and then end up choosing that person, then they're done?
Yeah.
Right? If you were Google, who would you want to rank out of those, And they obviously have machine learning and AI that they're using to generate this information. So it's constantly happening. It's happening in real time, and those are really the three things that I feel like are actionable right now out of this treasure trove that was the antitrust hearings last fall, and then this leak. I mean, this combination has pulled back the curtain in a way that people studying SEO are just like, whoa, what a year. Like, we never had this before, and we've learned more than ever.
Yeah, it's all the stuff that was speculated that Google always denied.
Yeah.
And we're now getting a peek under the curtain. It's like, yep, they were.
That's
a lot of people are probably vindicated. They said Google's got to be measuring this. Google kept saying no, and actually, this is stuff that they were using.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
and Chrome and clicks, I know for sure. It's really interesting. You will also get that thought process in your brain. Can I just manipulate this? Can I just have all my friends go click on my site? And I don't know the answer to that. It has never been we have never tried to rank by manipulating Google's index. I don't think that's the right approach. And what I will say is,
listen, there's going to be people that are going to try and figure it out.
That's right.
They're going to try and
sure.
do it. It's like every other thing, like, may you short term be able to figure it out. I think Google's very sophisticated at this point that for the most part they can figure that stuff out and not let it manipulate their rankings. Could someone do something?
Yeah.
Sure, but it's like anything else, right? Your time is, could that work for a little bit? Yeah, eventually Google's going to drop the hammer. It's like with links. Back in the day, everyone was buying links and getting as many links as you can, and then Google said nope. Boom, hammer dropped, and all of a sudden people's traffic is totally decimated overnight.
Yeah. So manipulation to me is a very short-term strategy. If you're by yourself, like some type of affiliate, and I picture the kid with I always say the Dorito stain T-shirt, you're by yourself, and the crush cans of Mountain Dew are all around you while you're on the keyboard, no problem. You got employees who have families, like, manipulating Google's index is not a strategy for you, right? You want to be thinking, obviously, much more long-term. And interestingly, since the beginning of June, those services like Algoru, they measure the volatility of rankings, and thus, then you can infer that Google changed their algorithm. Since June, there has been almost no green days. Like, Google is responding to this leak with big, massive algorithm changes. So, and they're going after just that manipulation from what was revealed here. What they said was that the leak was real and it was confirmed, but like, don't look at it like in that you can't really learn anything or whatever, but like you could, right? And so now they're responding to they're responding algorithmically different than they responded in their PR statement is the way that I think about that a little bit.
Cool. All right. Anything else? Any other, I think that was we've talked for a little over a half hour, some good takeaways and thoughts.
Yeah, hopefully folks found it helpful for them running their home service business, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Thank you, Tim. And, yeah.
All right. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please like and subscribe to our podcast, and have a great day, everybody.
Like, subscribe, leave a review.
Sure.
Cool. All right.
Sounds
Thanks.
good.
Thanks for listening to the Home Service Contractor Blueprint. Don't forget to leave a review and subscribe so you can stay up to date on home service trends.